listening to The Blitz, college fantasy football show with the Scholar and Emil.
Yes, week 10 of the college fantasy football season, The Blitz, college fantasy football show, with the Scholar John Laub and Emil Kadlec, the old man of fantasy. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. You're not that old, my friend, trust me. But what a great week already. The MAC kicked off on Wednesday. If you're playing college fantasy football, you have to be aware all MAC conference games are Wednesdays. They're going to have 4 or 5 games every Wednesday night. So I had a couple players in there, had to put them in my lineup already if you have the matchups. You have to be aware of that the rest of the year. Pac-12 kicks off. But Emil, 2 games were already canceled from the Pac-12 slate. So that's 4 teams out already. And then I believe, last count, there have been 6 games canceled this week. So if you're like me, you've been scrambling to the waiver wire, trying to get players to put in your lineups. Hopefully we got some here to help you with tonight. That's what we're here for, and to help you get some DFS lineups. But it has been a crazy last 48 hours in college football.
Wow. All right, well, let's go to the first slide.
Emil, we always start with our marvelous matchups. Where can we find value? Where can we find players on the waiver wire? Which games will give us the best bang for our buck? The highest game on the slate right now is Liberty at Virginia Tech. Earlier, it was Louisiana Tech and North Texas, but that game has been postponed because of COVID. So now it is Liberty versus Virginia Tech. 67.5 over under. But Virginia Tech is a 15-point favorite. But the 2 quarterbacks in this game are amazing college quarterbacks. One, Hendon Hooker of Virginia Tech. We've talked about him this year. He's a dual threat quarterback. You got to have him in your lineup. I was looking at the stats. He is the 22nd most productive quarterback, but he didn't play the first game of the season, and he barely played the second. He's been phenomenal. Also, the Hokies have a great running back, Khalil Herbert. We highlighted him 3 weeks ago, I believe, in our Under the Microscope. You've got to put him into your lineup. But the reason why I want to also focus on this game, if you have not seen him play or you have not been paying attention, Liberty has a quarterback, Malik Willis. Emil, he originally was a recruit and he went to Auburn. He is an SEC-level quarterback, but he lost the job to Bo Nix. Bo Nix came onto campus sophomore year, and he got the job. So Malik Willis decided to transfer to Liberty. And Emil, he has just been unbelievable. He's an SEC talent playing in an independent program. So far, he's just been so much better than the competition. Last time we saw him 2 weeks ago, Emil, 345 yards passing, 97 yards rushing, and 7 touchdowns. He's got fantasy games in the last 5, 39, 27, 20, 22, and 52. Malik Willis, if you've not seen him play yet, folks, this is going to be a fascinating game. Now, they're underdogs, so they're going to be playing, and Malik Willis is going to be throwing and running in the fourth quarter. There should be lots of garbage time production against the Hokies here. Absolutely love Malik Willis in this game. The other game, we're going to go to the Sun Belt. Arkansas State against Louisiana. 68. Actually, I didn't even notice that. I made a mistake. They're 68, so this is projected half a point higher than the other game. Now, Louisiana is a 14-point home favorite. But if you need a quarterback like I did today, I looked on my waiver wires. They are sparse for talent. But Levi Lewis, the quarterback aging Cajuns, I picked him up and started him. He's a good player, not a great player, but he can get points with his legs and with his arms. If you need a quarterback, get Levi Lewis. He's a quarterback home with an over-under of 68, and he's a good player. There are 2 running backs, Elijah Mitchell and Trey Regis. Get them both in your lineup. We know the Raging Cajuns are going to run the football. Don't love their wide receivers or tight ends. I don't think I would look for help there. Arkansas State. We want to go to the wide receivers. They have 3 fantasy studs. Jonathan Adams, Brandon Bowling, and Dahu Green. If you have them, start them. The problem with the quarterback position is they rotate. Logan Bonner and Lane Mitchell and Emil, both of them are on the waiver wire. And once in a while, one of them will go off for 28 points. The problem is it's more likely that one scores 20 and the other scores 12. You just can't start this rotation at quarterback. It absolutely drives me crazy, my friend. I mean, you want to because the offense is loaded, and that's why I love their wide receivers. But when they're rotating quarterbacks, I can't do it. Now, one of the games that is on right now, and who knows what's happening out west, but I hope that this game is kicked off. Washington State, Oregon State. Now, the Cougars, they've had Mike Leach, and Mike Leach has moved on to Mississippi State. But they bring in Nick Rolovich, and Nick Rolovich has been very successful at Hawaii, and he plays the run and shoot. They also have a true freshman won the job at quarterback, Jaden DeLaura. He's a very interesting prospect. Now, it's hard for me to start a true freshman in his first game on the road. If you're desperate, you could go ahead and start him. But I'm interested to see this young man, how he plays tomorrow in the run and shoot. If I'm going to go for the wide receiver position. Now, in the projections, you have to look at Rolovich, what he did at Hawaii. It looks like Travell Harris is the wide receiver who is in the best position in the run and shoot to succeed. Now, we haven't seen the rotation. We haven't seen snaps yet. But if I'm going to place a educated bet on someone, it is Travell Harris. They have Rainer Bell, Jameer Calvin, and Calvin Johnson. Now, I expect the Cougars to rotate at least 6 wide receivers. So it is tough, but the only guy I feel great about right now is Travell Harris. And we'll talk about another Cougar in a minute. Now, Oregon State, massive turnover on offense. Jake Luton, who is starting tomorrow or Sunday for the Jacksonville Jaguars, he was the Oregon State Cougars quarterback last year. Basically been the starter for the Beavers about 3 years. Huge. I think he's 6'6". Big player, has a big arm, but unfortunately doesn't throw the ball deep a lot. So we'll see what he does with the Jaguars. But there's 2 players on the Beavers who I am interested in and putting in my lineups. Jamar Jefferson, the running back. He was tremendous in 2018, but he got hurt last year, and he lost his job to a senior who's now on the Bears. Jamar Jefferson should get the vast majority of the snaps, the touches, and the receptions out of the backfield. Love him tomorrow. And they have a new wide receiver, Trayvon Bradford. Very interesting player, projects to be their number 1 target hog of the Oregon State Beavers. Like him a ton. This is a different game. Minnesota's 0-2. I'm actually cannot believe at how bad the Golden Gophers have started. Now, a little bit is the schedule hasn't been great. They lost to Michigan. And Maryland upset them in an incredible game last week. But I think it's a bounce back for Minnesota here. Minnesota has one of the best running backs in the nation, Mohamed Ibrahim. He had 44 carries last week, over 200 yards rushing, and 4 touchdowns. 2 studs at wide receiver, Rashad Bateman and Chris Autumn Bell. Like both of those receivers, put him in your lineups. And Tanner Morgan he's underachieved. I expect a bounce back game here against Illinois on the road. Now, Minnesota's a 7-point favorite on the road. They're going to be able to score against Illinois. Illinois has problems at the quarterback position, and they're not unbelievable at the running game. So I like Minnesota to win this game. I think they'll put up a lot of points. I don't think I'd put an Illini in my lineup. I don't think I have one Illini in any of my lineups. And I think I have 8. I have 8 teams, 8 lineups. I don't have an Illini. I guess if you're desperate, you can go there, my friends. And then in the ACC, we have another great one, North Carolina at Duke. If you haven't seen North Carolina, they're finally starting to come around on offense. Way back, I think in our first episode, we had highlighted quarterback Sam Howell, who's a legitimate top 5 prospect at quarterback. But he's only a sophomore. He started out slow, and he's been playing much better the last 3 weeks. But the Tar Heels are running the football down people's throats. Javonte Williams and Michael Carter are stars. You put both of those running backs into your college fantasy lineups. They are fantastic. They're wide receivers. We thought they had a great dual dynamic pair of wideouts. Unfortunately, only one of the players up to the billing. That is Damani Brown. Go ahead, put Damani Brown in your lineups. He's been great. I would not play Daz Newsome. He's been terrible. I wouldn't play him on any teams. Duke is interesting. Duke, you get a lot of garbage time because they fall behind. And here they're 11.5-point underdogs. I do like the Duke running back. If you need a running back, you could go with Deion Jackson. If you're desperate at tight end, Noah Gray. He doesn't have a lot of upside, but he has a very high floor. I've used Noah Gray a lot this year. You can go with him. Chase Bryce, the quarterback, he's only if you're desperate, the Duke Blue Devil quarterback. You might get some garbage time touchdowns from him. Emil, those are the marvelous matchups. Of course, we have Clemson and Ohio State, but they're either the over-under isn't high enough, or what we have is a blowout. Like Ohio State, I think they're like a 28-point favorite. So I don't list them on our matchups. When the matchup gets over 20, I just take them off our marvelous matchup board.
Sounds good. All right, off to the next slide.
Can't wait for tomorrow. So under the microscope, every week, we talk about 2 players that you need to put your eyeballs on. We've been scouting players all year long. We've seen some unbelievable ones. We told you to watch some great players. Tomorrow, since it's Pac-12, I'm going to identify 2 Pac-12 players that I'm going to be watching. First one is Max Borge out of Washington State. We were talking about the Cougars and the Beavers games earlier. He's a junior running back, 5'10", 198. He's basically started every game since he was a freshman. I shouldn't say he started. When he had James Williams on his team, he was the backup, but he had a lot of playing time. Here's what makes Borge so interesting and a fascinating evaluation. Emil, as a true freshman, he had 53 receptions as a running back. Last year, he had 86 receptions as a running back. He is a PPR monster. However, there are questions about his ability to run out of a regular formation. Remember, this was Mike Leach's air raid offense. Now they're transitioning to Nick Rolovich's run and shoot offense. I expect him to have more carries now and less receptions in Rolovich's offense. When I looked at the numbers over the summer at Hawaii, Rolovich's offense with the Rainbows did not target the running back. It was actually unbelievable. Borge had more catches last year, 86. Was it 86 or 83? 86. Than the entire Rainbows running backs had in the last 4 years. So it's going to be interesting how Rolovich transitions Borge into the offense. And how does Borge do in Rolovich's new offense? Borge has a third-round grade right now for me in the NFL. He is clearly an NFL-level draft prospect. I do want to see him transition to a different offense, and I'm looking forward to see how he carries the football. Because his NFL draft stock ultimately is going to come down to his ability to run the football between the tackles and navigate through traffic. But I like this young man. Check him out, everyone. He's under the microscope for the Cougars. And one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the league, Emil, is Kiran Slovis of USC. People are talking about him. I've been on this young man since he first got the job. 6'2", 200-pound true sophomore. It's interesting. He was the third-string quarterback last year, Emil, when they came out of training camp. He wasn't even supposed to be second-string quarterback, but they had injuries at the quarterback position for the Trojans. Well, what did that do? That forced Kiran Slovis into the lineup. He had one of the great freshman seasons in the nation last year. This young man can twirl the football. He has great passing skills. Trying to pop up. I know he set some ridiculous percentage. I want to tell you what his percentage. He completed over 70% of his passes as a true freshman. That is unbelievable. He also had 30 touchdowns against only 9 interceptions. The young man is accurate. The young man's intelligent with the football. Kiran Slovis, you're talking about a potential first-round pick in 2020. I like this young man. You've got to see him twirl the football, people. And you know what's amazing for us? I watched him at Pac-12 After Dark on the East Coast. And he sometimes had games that kicked off at like 4 or 7. But the Pac-12 has done us a favor. They are kicking this game off at 9 a.m. in the morning on the West Coast. That means we get to see the game at 12 noon on the East Coast. He is in prime afternoon Saturday slate. If you have not seen Kiran Slovis, the sophomore from the Trojans, check out the game tomorrow against Arizona State. What's even more interesting is Arizona State has a sophomore quarterback, Jaden Daniels, who was also sensational last year as a freshman. But Kiran Slovis, I have under the microscope. Those are my 2 Pac-12 players, everyone.
Beautiful. All right, off to the next slide.
All right. If you're like myself, you've been scrambling for quarterbacks. I lost in the last 48 hours 3 quarterbacks, but I play in 2 quarterback leagues. So it might seem worse than it is. And you have bigger rosters. But I still, with bye weeks and injuries, and I had Trevor Lawrence on 2 teams, I've been scrambling. So one player that I identified that actually just came out today, Jacob Free, is going to start again for the Trojans. Last week, Gunnar Watson got hurt. Jacob Free came in. He had a very good game. Jacob Free threw for over 300 yards. Troy is playing Georgia Southern this weekend. If you need a quarterback, Jacob Free of Troy, he's only on 1% of rosters right as of 4 this afternoon. If you need a quarterback, take Jacob Free of Troy. I think he gets you at least 20 points off the waiver wire. Running back. This game has a 64.5 over-under. But Penn State's a huge favorite. 25-point favorite. Penn State's 0-2. Maryland is 1-1, and they're a 25-point favorite. Fascinating line. Very confusing to me, but it's interesting. Devin Ford was not supposed to start at running back, but they've had injuries and they've had some health concerns in the backfield. So Devin Ford is taking over. If you look at the raw numbers, you might not be impressed. But you've got to remember, this is a huge home favorite and the Nittany Lions are 0-2. They're going to look to finally get in the win column. And as a 25-point home favorite, they should be running the ball a ton in the third and the fourth quarters to kill the clock. You need a running back. Go get Devin Ford of the Penn State Nittany Lions. He should be able to get you between 16 and 20 points off the waiver wire. And I couldn't believe this. When I found this out about 3 weeks ago, our friend Frank Gore has a son, Emil, and Frank Gore's son plays at Southern Mississippi. I couldn't believe it. When I first saw Frank Gore Jr., I was like, no way. And I looked it up, and Frank Gore Jr. is the New York Jets' son. I mean, that's how long Frank Gore's been playing in the NFL. He has an 18-year-old son at Southern Mississippi. He's a freshman. He's actually pretty good. And Emil, if you watch him, wow, does he look like his father. I don't know if he's as good as his father, but his style is very similar. He is one tough between the tackles runner. Now, I like this
freshman because too bad he's a freshman because it would be so cool to have both in the NFL at the same time. But you never know.
You know. I was making a joke on my podcast. Maybe he plays with his dad 3 years from now. Who knows, right? The way Frank's been, right? The way Frank's been going. But they play Northern Alabama. Now, Northern Alabama is not an FBS program. They are FCS. They are the lower level. Southern Mississippi should smack North Alabama. If you need a running back, go get Frank Gore. And what was Frank Gore? I want to look it up. I think he's on 1%. Yeah, 16% of rosters now. So you can go out and get Frank Gore. Emil, if you're like me, you love the SEC, they are loaded at wide receiver. Every time I look at the SEC, you look at the prospects, you look at the numbers. And this week, I was looking at this young man, Treylon Burks of the Arkansas Razorbacks. He is a sophomore, Emil. He is 6'3", 232 pounds. It is just amazing the size of player that the SEC recruits. This young man has scored over 30 fantasy points the last 2 weeks at wide receiver. In the SEC, only 4 players have 3 100-yard games. Elijah Moore of Mississippi, possible first-round pick. Jaden Waddle, Alabama, possible first-round pick before he got hurt. Devonta Smith, Alabama, first-round pick, definitely. And Treylon Burks. Emil, as of this morning, he was only on 49% of college fantasy football leagues. Go get Treylon Burks. They're a home underdog against Tennessee. I think the Razorbacks are going to win this game. Treylon Burks, go get him in your lineups. He has just been playing great football for the Arkansas Razorbacks. And wide receiver, Taj Washington out of Memphis, a red shirt freshman. When DeMonte Coxey went down for the Tigers, Calvin Austin stepped up and he's been playing great. And everyone's talking about Calvin Austin. Unfortunately, people aren't talking about Taj Washington. He's only owned on 8% of leagues. But college fantasy football is about systems, systems, systems. In the last 3 games, Taj Washington has scored 65.5 fantasy points. He's the 15th wide receiver in college fantasy football in the last 3 weeks. The Tigers are a 17-point or 18-point favorite against South Florida. Go pick up Taj Washington. I love him to smash this week against South Florida, Emil.
Boy, Those sound like very tempting players.
I got a bunch of them on my teams.
All right, here we are with the next slide.
All right, every day on our Friday nights, we like to start with a Fantastic Four. And just to understand everyone, the Fantastic Four can change. Players get injured. Games are canceled. So this is Friday night. We're recording about 8:30 Eastern time. But this is how I'm building my cash lineup around right now. Quarterback, Max Dugan, TCU. I like Max Dugan. They are a home favorite against Texas Tech. And the Red Raiders are awful on defense. Max Dugan is a dual threat quarterback. He has not scored a rushing touchdown in the last 2 games. Rushing touchdowns are fickle. But this young man scored 3 rushing touchdowns in the 2 previous games against Texas and Kansas State. So the rushing touchdowns are going to come. He has 250 passing yard upside. He's only 1,600 on a slate with a lot of high-priced quarterbacks. Sam Ehlinger, Sam Rattler, Sean Clifford, Desmond Ridder. You can choose which high-priced quarterback you want. But you have a super flex, and I always put a quarterback in the super flex. So we need to save money. I like Max Dugan for 6,400. I think he has 24-point upside. I'll take him. You always want Oklahoma Sooners. Emil, it's almost impossible not to have a Sooner in your DFS lineup. The question is not do I want one, it's which one do I want. I'm going with their running back, Ramondre Stevenson. He was suspended before the Peach Bowl, unfortunately, because he failed the drug test. Then the university suspended him the first 5 games of this season. He finally got on the field last week against Texas Tech. Emil, he had 30 DraftKings points. He had 87 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, 2 receptions for 13 yards. He's huge. He's not like your other. When I usually watch Oklahoma, they usually have quick, fast backs who excel in space. But this young man, I want to get you the right size because he's 6 foot, 246 pounder. And when Oklahoma puts him in the backfield and spreads them out wide with their 4 receivers, Ramondre Stevenson is a load the opposition to bring down. I love him in this start for 6,900. I don't usually give you a high-price receiver, but I had to this week because I think he's a must-start. Penn State lost to Ohio State last week, but Jahan Dotson was unbelievable, Emil. 43 DraftKings points, 8 receptions, 144 yards, and 3 touchdowns against Ohio State. And anyone who loves the Buckeyes and have seen them over the years, Ohio State's always loaded in the secondary. Jahan Dotson was basically doing this against NFL-level competition in the Buckeyes secondary. Unbelievable. Opening game this season against Indiana, he had 20 DraftKings points. So let's take a happy medium. 30 DraftKings points for 8,300. Love Jahan Dotson here against Maryland. And then I mentioned Minnesota in the opening segment. I want a piece of that passing game. I think it's a bounce back game. Chris Atman Bell is the young man that I want. He's only $5,000, so we have a nice balance with Dotson and Atman Bell. Last week, he scored 24.2 DraftKings points. He's a very good receiver. They throw a lot of deep passes his way. I really like him in this matchup against Illinois. I think he's clearly worth the $5,000 with a big ceiling, with a pretty nice floor for the Golden Gophers. So my Fantastic Four in the day slate: Max Dugan, Ramondre Stevenson, Jahan Dotson, and Chris Atman Bell. And ladies and gentlemen, There is 14 games on the slate, but 2 of them have been canceled already. Purdue, Wisconsin because of a COVID outbreak, and there was the Washington, Utah game. No, Arizona, Utah was also canceled because the University of Utah had a COVID outbreak. So there's only 12 games to pick from, but if you go to DraftKings, it'll tell you it's a 14-game slate.
Fantastic. All right, here we go to the next slide.
And we go to the evening slate. And one of the best things, I love to have players in my game that I'm going to be watching. And I'm going to be watching Notre Dame and Clemson. And I am excited. This is a big game. Clemson, without Trevor Lawrence, unfortunately, going to play the Fighting Irish in Notre Dame primetime TV. Ooh. I think Notre Dame's going to win, my friends. Whoa. I'm taking the senior quarterback, Ian Book, at home. If you've watched the Tigers this year, their defense is not as good as it has been. The offense is great, but they don't have Lawrence. But the defense can be beat. And here's what I like. Notre Dame's offensive line is awesome. Clemson's defensive line is young. You have a veteran offensive line that is nasty, mean, angry, and fired up. You have a senior quarterback in Ian Book, who's a borderline NFL prospect. He might be a 4th or 5th round pick. Maybe a team loves him, takes him early 4th round. Also depends what he does at the combine. But Ian Book, I will take the quarterback, home quarterback, as an underdog for only 6,600. 2 weeks ago against Pitt, he scored 31.5 DraftKings points. Against Florida State, 28 DraftKings points. And against South Florida, 25 DraftKings points. So Ian Book has upside here. I like Ian Book at home, the senior, against the freshman on the road. I'll take Ian Book. I need some value savings here. I have another big high-cost receiver later. I'm going with UCLA running back, Demetric Felton. Last year, he played behind a man named Joshua Kelly, the running back who's now at the San Diego Chargers. Demetric Felton is interesting because he's so talented. USC coach Brian Kelly had to get him on the field. How they did it is they employed him as a wide receiver, and they moved him all over the formation. Now, he did get carries out of the backfield, but Kelly was the main guy for the Bruins. But this year, the backfield is Felton's, and Felton is a pass-catching dynamo. He might have 15 carries, and he could have 8 to 10 receptions in this game. I love Demetric Felton of the UCLA Bruins, starting running back for 6,200. I got to get a piece of Ohio State. Justin Fields is the healthiest quarterback in the nation. Fantasy-wise, he is just off the hook great. I'm not going to tell you to put Justin Fields in. If you're watching this show, you already know how good he is. But I got to pick one of those Ohio State wide receivers. And Emil, when I have 2 good wide receivers in college fantasy football, I usually just choose the one who's a little less expensive. Garrett Wilson is a star, but he's 8,300. Chris Olavey is another star. He has scored 34 and 18 points in the first 2 weeks. Garrett Wilson has scored 31 and 30. So saving over $1,200 on Chris Olavey. It's kind of a way I build my lineups. When I have one of these explosive offenses and I want a quarterback wide receiver combo, yes, Garrett Wilson is arguably a little bit better. But in any game, at any week, Chris Olavey could lead the team in receptions based on the matchup. So I'll save the $1,200 and take Chris Olavey. We've mentioned it before. There's no tight end position. Tight ends play wide receiver in college fantasy football. Jalen Weidemer is a sophomore tight end. I had him once earlier in the year in my DraftKings Fantastic Four. Texas A&M Aggies love their tight ends, Emil. They target the tight ends. 2 weeks ago, Weidemer had 27 DraftKings points. The week before, he had 7, 10, and 16. This young man should get you a minimum of 15 DraftKings points. But Emil, look at the price. He's only $4,600.
Pretty low.
He scored 27 points last game. I'll take that price with a high ceiling, with a good offense that targets the tight end. And here's the story. There's probably only 5 college teams across the country who target the tight end as often as the Aggies. So I like Jalen Weidemer in the tight end for salary savings. So my night slate, my Fantastic Four, Ian Book, Demetric Felton, Chris Olavey, and Jalen Weidemer of the Aggies. That's the evening slate, DFS Fantastic Four. And there's 7 games on the evening slate, everyone.
Beautiful. All right, next slide.
All right, my friends, we have such a great slate of weekly live shows for all of our football diehards, readers, and our fans. It kicks off on Wednesday night, but it's still on footballdiehards.com, right, Emil, on the YouTube channel? You can still see it.
You can find it on the website, too, under the articles.
Perfect. So it's still available, but it's kicked off with Jason and Kyle every Wednesday night. Tomorrow in the afternoon, Bob Harris, the Hall of Famer, Ask Me Anything Fantasy Football. One of the best hours on video streaming that you could watch. Injuries, lineup questions, DFS, stacking, duo, anything you want, Bob will ask for fantasy football. He'll answer for you. Then Emil and I come back on Saturday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. The Line of Scrimmage, the DFS Cash Game Show. Check Emil and I out and watch it early Sunday morning if you can't see it Saturday night live. Then Jen, one of the best in the business, she loves her prop bets. Her and Emil do Prop Till You Drop, NFL player prop bets. Great show. Check it out, everyone. And then finally, to end the weekend, what is that, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Emil?
Yes, 10 a.m.
Excuse me, everyone. The Football Die Hard Sunday DFS show with Jason and Emil.
Yeah, and also this week, Prop Till Drop is going to be at 9 o'clock Eastern Time right after this show due to the coronavirus because Jen has to work Saturday and anyway.
I got
coronavirus catches us again, but we will work through it. Excellent. All right, the final slide tonight for the Blitz.
All right, we bounced back. After my 0-4 disaster, Emil, I've been 2-1 the last 2 weeks.
Excellent.
I had a good week, 2-1 last week. I was happy. I was on the plus side. I'm almost at 500. I'm working hard for everyone. Trust me. So, my Scholar's best bets for week 10, and I want to win. Trust me. This is my money more than I want you to win, but I'm here to help you win also. But you're going to see, I like a lot of home teams this week. And here's why. We've gotten a lot of the season under. We know which teams, what defenses are good, which offenses are terrible. We've gotten enough data, and we've seen enough games. You have a better feel for these teams. And I usually do really well late in the season. I got 3 home teams that I like a lot here. 1, I love Arkansas versus Tennessee. We were talking about Treylon Burks, their wide receiver. They have a competent quarterback in Felipe Franks, and they have a good running back in Raheem Boyd. I like home underdogs. I like home underdogs because these are college kids. They usually leave on a Friday night to go play Saturday. These aren't pros. They're not necessarily married. Maybe a few are, but in general, they're not. It's a big disruption of their life to get on a plane Friday, go to a hotel, stay overnight, and play a game on the road. And it begins to wear on a young player at this time in the season. Remember, midterms just passed. How are you doing in classes? Finals are coming up. So real life intervenes here. I like home teams in general, and I'll pick some away teams. But in general, I like to look at home teams here late in the year. So take the Razorbacks as underdogs getting one. Also, Tennessee's just not very good. So I like the Razorbacks here. 2, defense, defense, defense. The Cincinnati Bearcats, I've been riding them. And Emil, I'm going to ride them until they lose, and I don't think they're going to lose again. They are a great defense. They're a top 10 team. No one in the American Athletic Conference puts out a defense like the Cincinnati Bearcats. And defense wins. And defense especially wins when you're home. You're taking a Houston team that has got, generally an inexperienced quarterback on the road against a great defensive unit. Emil, the Bearcats have 3 NFL prospects in the secondary. They are loaded. Now I'm talking about prospects 4th, 5th round. But 2 of these young men in the Bearcats secondary are going to be on NFL fields. They are loaded. I love Cincinnati. I don't want to give up the hook. I'm so happy it's minus 13. I don't want to give up 14 and 14 and a half. Go get it now. Love the Bearcats, minus 13 at home against Houston. And I got to bet on this one. And I'm not a Notre Dame guy. Notice I got a Michigan shirt on. I grew up, I very much dislike Notre Dame. Still do for the most part. But my job is to win. And in college fantasy football, I'm looking for the best players.
Rudy,
and when I gamble,
Rudy.
Yeah, you guys, that was on TV the other night, and I saw it for the first time in years.
Oh, my God.
It's a great movie.
Wonderful.
It's great, right?
Oh,
it is.
fantastic.
It's really good. So I saw it the other day, but that's not why I'm taking Notre Dame here. I want Clemson, but I use my brain for betting, not my heart. But I'll root for Notre Dame if I got to bet on them tomorrow. I'll tell you that much. But I'm going to go with the offensive line and the senior quarterback. You have an inexperienced defensive line in Clemson, and you have a true freshman going on the road to play against Notre Dame. Now, the only difference, this freshman gets lucky. They're not going to be crowded. They're not going to have a lot of fans. Oh, my God, primetime Notre Dame with 70,000 people, forget about it. But it's still a very tough climate, a very tough environment for a freshman quarterback to step into. I'll take Notre Dame getting 5 as a home underdog. And this week, those are my 3 best bets for our viewers, Emil.
Oh, those sound very good. Maybe you'll hit the break even or even go ahead this week on your totals.
I'm feeling really, sometimes it's weird when you're betting. There's some weeks where you're like, these are good, don't love them. I love this week's bets, Emil. I really, really like these bets this week because I see what do I want to say? Matchups that I can exploit. And we have data that tells us we can do that. College football is very hard early because you have so much turnover. If you think the NFL turnover is a lot, college football is even more. But yeah, so we got data now.
We got a couple comments on the message board on YouTube. Myron Kidd said, "Great call on A. Smith A&M last week."
Oh yeah, Aeneas Smith. I put him in the Fantastic Four. Yeah. He got a lot of points. I think it was 28 or 30.
Read this. He says, "Hey guys, I have a 6-team teaser parlay.
Whoa.
Please help you like." Okay, he said Cincinnati minus 4.5, Michigan plus 6.5, Oregon.
I like those.
Minus 1.5.
I like those.
Nebraska plus 13.5.
I'm worried about that, but you are getting 13 points, so it's okay. But I'm not in love with that. I love the first 3.
All right, Florida 13.5 plus 13.5.
Are they getting or giving?
Getting.
Ooh, I like that because they're an offensive team. I like that.
Right. Well, hopefully. Oh, and he also
That's what
has
he's got?
Fresno State minus 1.5.
I like that one. So the only one I'm concerned about is that fourth one. I don't know if Nebraska's very good. Good luck, my man, but I like the other 5 bets a lot.
Fantastic. All right, great show. That was a blast, and we will look forward to tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. No, excuse me. 7 o'clock Eastern time for our DFS NFL. I'll get that right eventually. I do show up, so I must know it.
Hey, you got 5 shows. I sometimes have a hard time remembering 2, so I'm sure it's much harder than me.
All right, sir. It was a blast.
Have a great one, everyone.